All right, what's up, familia? Welcome to the pad. Hope you guys are doing good. Keep it between the lines. Got your loads secure, man. Let's get into it. If you guys don't know what's going on, let me go ahead and remind everybody. I'm trying to do a little bit of this Chicano history. I don't know, once, twice a month or so. Just because it's a lot of stuff that I myself don't even know, man. And to tell you guys the truth, what we're gonna talk about today, I'm actually a little bit ashamed, a little bit embarrassed, man, because this actually took place in my neck of the woods, literally. And I'm gonna be honest with you guys, I don't know much about it, really, at all. I probably heard the term once, and that was it. You could have told me the name Sal Castro, I would have no idea. So because I don't really know, let's bring in a couple of guys that do know. You guys know this guy as high school studies teacher from San Jose, California, man. One, Mr. Robert Anthony.
How you doing? Hope everybody's doing well out there. Ed, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you as well, man. You got some big plans for the A's this year?
I had game one. We beat Otani. We
Okay.
started out 1-0, and I was like, man, this is gonna be a good season.
Gosh,
And
he's probably like the best Otani, man. I'll tell you,
yeah,
he can do it all, man. He can do it all.
And then after
And
that,
let's
we played the A's.
Yeah. And let's also bring in my good homie right here, man. You guys can find him on YouTube, Chicano Ideas. This guy is like an encyclopedia. I'm very impressed with this guy, man. Let's get him in here. I call him Root Beer, but let's bring in Rudy. What's going on, big dog?
Going, I'm good, great. Culture is power, history is knowledge.
That's how you start. That's how he ends all his videos, man. I like that. I like that. So, well, let's go ahead and get into it, fellas. Um, I, for one reason or another, just curiosity. I started fumbling around a little bit more on Chicano history, just because I said it last time, but I'll say it again. Nobody's taught this. Nobody has taught this. I grew up my entire life going through the school system and just talking to everybody. And whenever anybody talks history, it's you know, I don't want to make it all racial or anything, but it's either the whites and the black or the blacks. You can hear about the George Washingtons, the Thomas Jeffersons, the Abraham Lincolns, all those guys. You can hear about the Martin Luther Kings, the Rosa Parks, the Malcolm X's. You can hear about all that. I have never heard of some of the guys that we're going to be talking about, or this specific video. But as we go forward, some of these guys, I've never heard of them before, nor do I know their story. And I think it's a shame because it is American history. So without further ado, hey, what's going on? Artie Familia, Andrew, what's going on, man? There was a big protest, I believe it was in 1968, that took place with a bunch of high schools in the East LA area. And me being from that area, like I said, I'm a little bit embarrassed not knowing some of this stuff. One man, Sal Castro. Rudy, before we get to the protests and everything, what can you tell us about Sal Castro?
From what I know, he was the biggest organizer for the LA area, and besides, because the walkouts was a nationwide. Rodolfo was known for his walkout in Colorado. So Castro was the head who was in college, who started the Chicano Youth Leadership Conference, and he was known to help bring and train students to protest school boards for better rights of having Mexican culture and education in the schools. But Sal Castro was from LA, and he lived in Mexico during grade school. And so he learned a lot about Mexican culture and how Mexicans really lived in Mexico. And so when he came back during elementary school, still he got really mistreated because all he spoke was Spanish. And so as he graduated high school, he went to the military, and he always was pretty smart. And after he chose to leave the military to get married, but he did he does have a bachelor's, from what I should have said, that he gained while being in college. But that's just a little bit of, because I will say Sal Castro, he's part of the seven names, but Sal Castro, there's not a lot about him because I did some reading about him before previously, and there's not a lot of information. It's very small. It's just uh, him being the main leader of the walkouts for the LA County or the East Side, like Garfield is one for an example, Garfield High.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. There was quite a few schools that
5
were
schools.
in this protest. But wasn't he also doing? Didn't he do something before? I know we're going to talk about the walkouts and all that, but I believe he was involved in something before that as well. I'm not sure if any of you guys could touch on that. Robert, do you know anything
You
of?
know, the thing with Sal Castro is that although there's not like a plethora of information out there, oh, good word, been wanting to put that into a conversation, a plethora of information on him out there. You know, the thing about him that is awesome is that not only it's what he did, man. He inspired his students, right? He inspired his students for this walkout. He was like a trusted, the most trusted adult that these young kids, because we got to remember they were all in high school, right? And a lot of people want to water it down like it was just Sal Castro and some other adults. The students played a lot into it. You know what I mean? He was more of a confidant, and he was a guy who, he wouldn't exactly, he guided him through the process. You know what I mean? He was like Rudy was saying, he was a very smart individual. You know what I mean? He was a teacher at the school. He had left another school. I don't know, something happened where I don't know if he got into some type of trouble. And I don't even know if it was a more affluent school, but he left. He had left that school. And he was in a East LA school, and he just was one of those guys, man. He inspired his students, and because of that, the walkout transpired. There's no walkout without Sal Castro, but it's not a Sal Castro walkout. The students played a heavy hand in the walkout because they took a lot of abuse. If you saw, especially if you saw the video that you just showed, you know what I mean. But the thing about Sal Castro as well is that not only did he do that, the man was indicted. He was facing prison time, man. That guy was. If I'm not I don't got my notes on me. If I'm not mistaken, he was facing 66 years of prison time for his involvement in this.
Right.
You know what I mean? And he didn't falter. You know what I mean? And he stayed strong, and he stayed with the. I know everybody says it nowadays, but he stayed with the process. And he like I said, I actually believe without the walkouts and without Sal Castro, there's no Chicano studies. There's no ethnic studies. If you take a look at what the students were asking for and what their demands were, and the way they went about it, and all their gripes, man, there wouldn't be no Chicano studies, ethnic studies, if it wasn't for that walkout and that movement, in my opinion.
Right. Yeah. No, I agree, man. Let me just go ahead and read this. It's just a little something about him. So he was born in October 25th, 1933 in Boyle Heights, and he passed away in April 15th, 2013, not too long ago, in Silver Lake. Let's see. What did Sal Castro accomplish? Sal Castro, a teacher at Lincoln Heights High School in East Los Angeles, a Mexican-American and an educator who worked to instill pride in his students' Chicano heritage, led the first Chicano Youth Leadership Conference at Camp Hess in Malibu. Man, so they used to have these meetings with a lot of the most educated Chicanos from different high schools, and they would go up to this. I don't know. I wouldn't say resort. It was just kind of like out in the mountain in Malibu, and they would actually hang out and just share a bunch of ideas, man. That's crazy to know, man. They would get the most educated, the most bright Chicanos from all of these schools, go up there, and they would just share ideas, man. That is, you know what? Something that sounds like that, where it's like, come on, I mean, what is that really that big? Yeah, actually, it is, man. When you start sharing ideas like that, that can really start getting some things going. What's your thoughts on that, Rudy?
Yeah, sharing. That's why I call it Chicano ideas, because
Mm.
it's not. It's if multiple people were in a circle, if your 10 homeboys were sharing ideas about bettering the community, it would be powerful the same way we share our negative ideas. If homies just understand the power of the positive ideas, like, so these guys who are what you can imagine on another level of creativity, I mean, those had to been make sense on why the process was able to have these walkouts, because they had the confidence, they had the people who were willing to, organize, circle up, and let's share ideas and create something.
Let me go ahead and read this minorities, Pocho's progress, because this was a thing for them when he was trying to talk to his students. There was kind of like this confusion, from what I understand, where it's like, I you kind of hear it a little bit today, but it was a lot more back then, when it was like, you know what, you're not Mexican enough to be Mexican. You're not American enough to be American. You're kind of one of these just stuck in the middle. And that's where a lot of them started hearing the word pocho. And that's what it says right here. Pocho, or feminine term pocha, is a term used by Mexicans frequently in a pejorative way to describe Chicanos and those who have left Mexico. Stereotypically, Pochos speak English and lack fluency in Spanish. The word derives from the Spanish word pocho, used to describe fruit that has become rotten or discolored. Um, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. I never really knew that's what pocho meant. I knew it was used as a term to uh, to call, Chicanos, right? Like the real Mexicanos would kind of call us pochos, like, oh man, he's a pocho. But I never knew it actually meant it was a fruit that was rotting. That I did not know. Did Robert? Did you know that?
I didn't know that. I remember hearing the word growing up, and I
Wow.
always knew that it was meant to be offensive towards me. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But
Mhm.
I never knew that it meant rotten food. I just thought it was somebody just trying to let me know, like, you're not from Mexico, you're not from where, you're a poacher, you're Americanized. You know what I mean? You're less than. So I knew it was offensive, but I did not know that that's what it was. So when I remember looking that up, I was like you. I was like, wow, that's a pretty strong word. That's a pretty strong word to call, a pretty strong term to call somebody. You know what I mean? Especially when in realization, you take a look at the branch. It's the same branch. Same roots might be a different branch.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And to call somebody that's pretty offensive. But it was said a lot, and it made it to Time magazine.
Yes, actually, that's
Magazine
what
was the Bible back then.
yes, he read that to his students. It was in Time magazine. I want everybody to take this in. Time magazine, yeah, it's around today, but back then, magazines, especially Time magazine, was something much bigger than what it is today. And he read it to his students from Time magazine that they were pochos. They were looked at as pochos. It was in actual Time magazine back in that day, man. Rudy, did you know that pocho meant discolored fruit or rotten fruit?
No, I did not know that.
That
Like,
is
I just knew it as dissing Chicanos. That's all I knew.
Yeah, yeah, I had no idea of that either, man. Just like you said, Robert, I knew it was just derogatory, but I did not know that's what it meant. I want to read one last thing. His legacy here. He will be remembered as a teacher, counselor, leader, and courageous adult who stood with students in the 1968 walkouts, which we will get to. Ever since, shoot, I think I lost my spot. Walkouts, and ever since dedicated his life to learning and leadership. Uh, Board President Monica Garcia said in a statement, Sal Castro's courage and dedication will continue to be inspirational to future generations of students and educators. Man, um, I am becoming just more and more and more, man. I'm telling you guys, more and more into the Chicano studies, the Chicano stuff, man. a lot of things that we really don't know about, that most people don't know about, unless you yourself go out and seek it. And that's kind of what I want to get into here. So let's talk a little bit about the walkouts. I guess they didn't, there were certain things going on in some of these schools. One of the things is the restrooms were closed. Kids were not able to use the restrooms at certain times of the day. They would close and lock the restrooms. And at the same time, if you needed to go take a piss, it's like, hey, you can't go take a leak outside. You go take a leak outside, there's punishment. Also, you couldn't speak Spanish because in those days, if you're caught speaking Spanish, they would actually get the paddle, make you bend over in front of the entire class, and put it to your nalgas, man, in front of everybody. Damn, Robert, can you talk to us just a little bit about that, man, and some of the other things that were going on?
Yeah, definitely. You know, as a matter of fact, I brought that up before because, you know, my mom went through that. She was from Arizona, and it was the same way with her when she spoke Spanish. And at first, it's hard to believe, right? Come on, you're going to get hit in high school, but it happened. You know what I mean? But the other things that were happening, man, that are very interesting, man, is that back then, and it's kind of a double-edged sword to me, man, because I think it's needed today. But back then, remember, I don't know, Rudy, you're younger. I'm not trying to say that as that put down, but you're younger. I don't know if you remember me and Ed. Do you remember you had wood shop in high school?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
You guys have that? Or auto?
There was auto.
Yeah.
You know, wood shop.
Those programs started dying out.
Yeah, the girls would have economics, home economics, this and that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, unfortunately, those are things that are of need today, right? Like there would be a lot of people right now today who would think, man, you know what? How can we get more people interested in school? How about if we had an auto mechanic shop? How about if we had a wood, right? But back then, the unfortunate thing is that's the only direction they were steering Chicanos. Right? So it was like, Ed, you know, Ed wants to go to UCLA business school. I'm a teacher, a counselor. I would talk to you and be like, you know, Ed, it's probably more reasonable that you get a job like, man, you're good with your hands and you talk to people well. You'd probably be a good mechanic. When they open up your own business, you could do good. And they would steer Chicanos in that direction. They would steer them to they weren't steering them to colleges. They weren't steering them in that direction at all. Counselors were like, no way, Mexican person going to college? Forget it. We got these classes for them. So that was another thing that was happening where students were fed up, right? I believe at that time also, the dropout rate for Chicanos in that time period was 75%. That's high, man.
Very.
Well, UCLA in the backyard of LA right there, during the 70s, I guarantee you, I don't know the exact number, they didn't even have 500 Mexican Americans going there.
Okay.
It's a very low number. And I'm saying 500 just because it might be 100 or less.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually came up with doing a little bit of research that, you know, before the walkouts, there would only be about 40 students average that would go to UCLA. Jump too forward here, but when we get to the East LA 13 that were incarcerated, but after that it jumped up to 1,200. So
heavily recruiting them. You know what I mean? They started heavily recruiting them, right?
Yes.
San Jose State too. San Jose State in the 60s and 70s blew up with education, with Chicanos and Mexican Americans, or however you want to define yourself. You know what I mean? But that's another thing that we didn't. Another thing that we didn't see the effect of Sal Castro and all this stuff is, man, because of that, man, he pushed that. You know, his legacy is, you know, it's like you say, man, it's right there in LA. I wonder how many people in LA know about his legacy, and if people don't know about it, why wasn't it taught? Why is that suppressed?
Yes, right.
You know, why is it suppressed that we don't teach about? You know, I always tell you this, man, and I stand by it, man. If you want people to be excited about so-called American history, and to me, this is American history, by the way, right? To me, this isn't just Chicano history. This is American history, man. Yes. This guy put it down. He just happens to be Chicano,
Mhm.
right? But my thing is, man, if you want people to be excited about all this stuff that you're teaching, teach us everything,
Mhm.
right? Don't exclude Ruben Salazar. Don't exclude Sal Castro and Corky Gonzalez and all of these people who played significant roles in the shaping of the Mexican American awakening. You
Right.
just can't do that. They're doing a disservice to the youth, and they're doing a service to everybody because it's good information for everybody to have. That's my opinion.
Yeah, no, definitely, man. And yeah, there was just a pushing in some of these schools where it's like, you know what, we're not really gonna focus too much on the book smarts and just kind of just push you guys to, working with your hands a lot more. And that's kind of your future. Not a lot of college talk back then. It was a little bit more just, hey, just work with your hands, pick up a mop. They would make them do janitorial work for they would get the kids and say like, hey, you know what, you're late to school, so now you get to clean up the school and make them clean the toilets and things like that, things that they wouldn't do to kids in other schools, man. But hey, Rudy, the Brown Berets played a little bit of a role here with the school walkouts, man. Can you tell us anything about that?
I know that. Excuse me. Yeah, I only know a little bit about because they started. They were college students, I believe, and Salvador Castro did have an influence in how organizing the Brown Berets, and so he would see. I don't know if you guys remember the walkout that they did in 2006. You remember those? Okay, so
No.
Sal Castro was kind of against people telling kids to walk out if there's not going to be any adults to protect them. Like Robert said
Mm,
earlier, when you read about it, that's what the Brown Berets were also about, protecting the younger youth who were walking out of these high schools. But they were about organizing and betterment, and watching the police. Obviously, the Brown Berets got this idea off of the Black Panthers, also, but the Brown Berets, yeah, they're an organization meant to like be our own police for our own community.
yeah, yeah, I saw that, man.
Uh-huh.
Especially once everything kind of went haywire. But having these high school kids get together and say, "Hey, look, we're tired of this." They went. I think Sal Castro actually took a small group of students to another high school to their libraries and checked it out and see, hey, look at everything they got. Everything that they got and the privilege they have that you don't. Just so they could get kind of an idea. And when they were like, okay, you know what, this is what we're gonna do. Um,
I
at
think we're all.
first,
I'm
some people
sorry.
were talking about violence, some people were talking about certain things, but when the idea came for school walkouts, it was a group effort with numerous of schools around the city. That is just like badass, man. But Robert, they're talking about like, hey, we're a little bit scared because what if people decide not to walk out, man? I mean,
Right.
imagine that danger, Robert. What goes on through your
Well,
mind?
real quick, if you don't mind me backtracking real quick,
Yes,
because you
sir.
were talking about it, him taking those kids to the library. No, I don't think it was by mistake or by accident that he chose Malibu. I think
Okay.
choosing Malibu let people see something else besides their environment.
Mm,
You know what I mean?
mm,
And I think that was very very smart, man. Because if you don't know anything else is out there, it doesn't spark anything. It's
right.
the same thing every day. It's like how are you going to do better if you don't know better,
Mm,
right? So I think that was really smart of the man to do that. And another thing is we were talking about the brightest coming and this and that. Not only the smartest kids got to go probably,
mm,
right? Because this is offside. But I remember when you came down and spoke to my school,
mm.
we were picking students to go. Me and Ed, you met Ed, of course, right? And I remember there was some students, and I was like, man, I don't know if this dude should go see this guy because this is a privilege You know what I mean? Because it really is,
Yeah.
you know.
Right.
So I
Right.
was right, and my guy, man, he put it so smooth, man. He was like, you know what? We're trying to reach everybody, right? We're trying to
Mm,
reach everybody. He's all, this is a privilege that he's gonna get, even though he didn't earn it,
mm,
right? So there were some students, I'm pretty sure, who got to go to that event who didn't earn it, but it was a privilege for them because they still have a voice.
mm.
And I think Sal Castro, man, if you hear him talk, if anybody out there on who's ever watched on YouTube, man, look up some Sal Castro stuff. When he talks about this movement and about these young people, you could feel him talking about it, bro. He really believed everything that was going on was for the betterment of not only the Chicano people, but for all people. Because you know what, man, if this doesn't happen, man, you know, who's to say people wouldn't say anything if Vietnamese spoke Vietnamese in school, or if
Mm.
Indian spoke Indian in school, or if people spoke another language in school? You know, nobody was speaking different language. It was Mexican people who were doing that, and we were the ones who had to go through that struggle, and we were the ones who had to go through that. You know what I mean? Kind of like bite that bullet. We'll take that bullet so everybody else down the line doesn't have to. And I think that's awesome, man. And I think that's what's missed with Sal Castro. You know what I mean? It's just that his heart and his intent, from everything I've seen of him, man, is just, it's pure, man. When it comes to this movement, you know, he gets emotional. You can hear it in his speech, man. And that's the thing about it. So I'm sorry to get sidetracked, man. But going back to your question about what if people wouldn't have walked out, man. Now that would have been a pretty bad day, right?
Mm.
That would have been a pretty bad day just because of all the time that they spent together to make this happen, right? But once you've done the labor and once you've done all that footwork, like we were saying, the Brown Berets got involved, right? The Brown Berets were a militant, in your face type of group. They weren't going to let that slide. Where, you know, I think everybody knew this is going to pop off. I just
Mm.
think that they didn't know the effects of it and the physical beatings that they were going to get by doing this, because they did get beat. A lot of these
Yeah.
high school students, you know, they did
Yeah.
get beat, and they got beat pretty severely, right?
Right.
So, you know, I
Yeah.
think people didn't see that coming. Like, hey, we're just high school kids. Well, you get one too.
Right. Right. You know what, man? Looking up at Sal Castro, some of his videos and anything that's out there, you know, I don't know the guy, but he seemed like a pretty cool guy, man. He
Yeah,
did.
he's
Yeah.
got that. You
Yeah.
know, he got that aura about him, right?
Yeah, he seemed like an all right guy. Hey, Rudy, you know, you study a lot of these guys and everything. How does one, man, in your opinion, how does one get something organized? You know, these kids, they were just high school kids, man. How do they organize something to say, like, hey, you know what? We need everybody to walk out. We just can't be the only ones. It just can't be five representatives from each school walking out. We got to get everybody behind it. How do you think these kids went about it, man?
Well, they had Sal Castro in their area.
Mm,
They had whoever he had besides him. And like you said, he was taking kids to other parts of the county of LA County, showing them other schools. So it's someone of an older person with that wants to inspire. And when you talk about kids, so it was a Chicano who helped inspire these kids. Let's go to the mountains. Let's share ideas. Let me take you to these other schools and show you what is needed. So
all right, did we?
and plus, you got to think of the time the system of this country was. You know, black and white and brown and white. You know, you like you said, you can't eat here.
I think we're losing them here.
Inspiration, knowing that you had for these kids to follow.
Right.
Okay.
You
I
lost me.
think we lost you. I think we lost you a little bit there, Rudy. But I think we got the gist of it, man. And you know what was
Okay.
crazy too? Then and in those days, man, there wasn't any social media. There wasn't any, let me get my phone and send this to everybody in the school so everybody could get it. This had to be all word to mouth. This had to take a lot of footwork, a lot of passing out of papers and flyers and
I
anything
guarantee
you
the
can
only
get.
phone was on the wall, huh, bro?
Yeah, the phone. Yeah, it was a rotary phone, man. You know, that's a lot. That's a lot of phone
A
calls,
lot
man.
of dialing, right?
Back and
That's a lot of
forth. But
dialing.
no, it was definitely a lot of footwork to get this organized to make all this happen. Again, I want everybody to remember this was numerous of schools that
Right.
decided to do it all at once. And one thing that I was able to see is that the kids wanted to go ahead and do it. I guess one school went ahead and did it. And Sal Castro was like, listen, we need cameras. We need everybody. We need eyeballs. And this is the thing. Sal Castro was an actual teacher at the school.
Right.
So he is getting with the students and saying, hey, protest for the betterment of you guys. You know, and when the students realize, like, hey, listen, if we're not there, if our attendance is bad, it costs us the school money. So that's where we hurt them. So we leave. This and Sal Castro is a teacher, so this is how he gets paid,
More
you
than
know.
money.
And he's there saying like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm with you guys, man. We can organize this. We can do this, but we need to do it right. We need cameras. We need to talk to get whoever we can, radio stations, television stations, and everything of that nature, man." And they went ahead and they did it, but it wasn't just one day. Robert, do you know how many days it was? Was it 3 days?
I believe it was 5 days.
Okay.
I believe it was 5 days. I could be wrong. Three sounds kind of right too, but I believe it was more than a couple days, right?
Okay.
Because it spread out to the community as well,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So that's the thing too, man. Is that like you were saying, he he's getting hit in the pocket as well, right? He's getting hit in the pocket as well, and to still be with the movement, that's amazing to me. You know how many adults are willing to, not only am I going to help you organize this, and not only am I going to be your captain and navigate you through this, but I'm going to take a pay cut on this, and I'm going to jail on this, and I might go to prison over this, but I'm willing to do that. That just had to inspire his students to be like, man, if Mr. Castro is willing to do that, we got to be willing to go that extra mile, right? And the one thing I can't say about this time period is that although there wasn't social media, and we were making fun of the phone thing, right? There was protesting. Protesting was huge. Yeah. You know what I mean? You had the black people were protesting, women were protesting, the Vietnam War was being protested. Chicanos were protesting. Native Americans were protesting. So protesting was kind of like, that's the avenue we're going right now. I don't want to say it was in vogue, that was the thing to do, but a lot of people were starting to say, hey, you know what? We need to stand up, and this is the way we're going to go about it, protesting, right? So that was the time to protest, and that was the effectiveness of it because it spread, right? It made news, man. There's a quote in the movie that I always remember him saying when have you seen the movie, both of you?
Not in a while, but I've seen it
I
before.
don't know if it's an accurate quote. I don't know if it's an accurate quote, but in the movie he tells one of his students to read about the Mexican Americans in the Civil War or something, and then the guy was like, "Well, there's nobody there. There's nothing on that part." He's like, "Why not? We were there. We fought there." And then he tells him, "Okay, well, read about this." And the guy was like, "Mr. Castro, there's nothing there." And he says something that always sticks with me, man. He's like, "If it's not written down in history, then it didn't happen."
Right.
It didn't happen. So we hear all these, we're neglected of all these stories. Are they written in history? Where are they? Why, did they happen? Of course they happened. They're written somewhere because they do come to light. So, like I said, there's got to be a more willingness to share all of this good history that a lot of people have created. There's got to be more of a willingness to do that. It's not Chicano history is better, African American history is better. It's all American history. And if we could start taking a look at it on that avenue, you know what I mean? It's just I think somebody could be as prideful of Sal Castro, even though they're not Chicano, and be like, man, that man stood up for students. You don't have to be Chicano to recognize that. You know what I mean? So I just think that we got to figure out a way to make sure that we're incorporating all of these things, to make sure that people don't forget about Sal Castro. He's got a school named after him.
Yeah.
There's a school named after him. I wonder how many people walk by Sal Castro's school and be like, I wonder why they named a school after Sal Castro. Who was, nobody even knows anything about him.
You're 100% right, man. You are 100% right. What's up, Cordovas? Keep it between the lines, brother. You're 100% right, Robert. If you were to tell me beforehand, I don't know, like 3 months ago, 4 months ago, the name Sal Castro, I wouldn't know. I would say like I don't know, is that somebody's steal or like what? Does he have a little taqueria or something? I don't know, man. But what? The time that this took place was during the Vietnam War. And what you said there was absolutely correct because he was like, hey, look, read to me about the brave Chicanos that served in the Civil War. And they were looking for it and they're like, yeah, it's not, we don't see anything. It's like, yeah, it's not there, but it happened. And then they started bringing up other wars, World War II, and the students were like, "What about World War II? Were there Chicanos serving in World War II?" And he's all like, "Yes, but you won't find it in the books."
Right.
And at that point, the Vietnam War was going on, and they were like, "What about Vietnam? Because that's the war that's happening right now." And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah. There's Chicanos all over the Vietnam War right now as well." As he, pointed up to the American flag and said, our blood has earned this flag like so much. I know I'm kind of paraphrasing here. I don't remember word for word, but then it was brought out later on that most Chicanos were being put in the front lines in the Vietnam War, man, to fight. But hey, Rudy, what do you make about that, man? About a lot of the history, but you don't see a lot of the Chicano in that history, which should just be American history.
Or one thing too, I wanted to say, Sal Castro was facing 15 counts of conspiracy. That's what he was facing.
Right.
Yeah. So like, so it's like, what do I think about that? I mean, I could just say, well, I mean, this it's not for us. The system wasn't created to inspire us. The country of his story is not to motivate our people. Why would they already motivated the blacks by inspiring them with Malcolm X? So why would they want to show somebody like Rodolfo, who's pretty much like our Malcolm X, who was a nationalist? So, it's not for our inspiration. It's all about the Europeans and how they conquered us and how they civilized us and our nation. So it's like, that's why we're not going to hear about our community. And especially because if you're a system that's already depressing one people of the blacks, how can you inspire? If you go and inspire and teach somebody else their history and show them Corky Gonzalez, who's like a Malcolm X, then you got two cultures, two communities like that they had to deal with what was happening in the 60s. You got too much inspiration for people to not love this nation called the United States of what we're a part of. So, how I think, Cholo.
Yeah.
Like, I'm into that Rodolfo Corky nationalist state of mind and stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you, man. I got you. And let's get to now what you were talking about of them facing jail time. So these walkouts, there was a lot of beating. The first day seemed pretty nice and calm. So the second day, I believe, it was somewhere around like 3 or 5 days, but it was the few other days that the police actually started beating these high school students. The thing is, none of this was televised. They went ahead, they got all the footage, and they went ahead and they cut it up and said that it was the students being wild and rowdy and everything like that, but they never showed any of the police officers hitting or striking any of the students. Later on, in years now everybody can go back and look up some of that footage, and it's there. You can see police officers beating high school students, girls, even the young girls. Not to say that it's okay to beat the young men, but the young girls as well. They're beating them with their nightsticks. But the news never reported on that. They was just saying that, hey, there's violent protests because of the students and them. And while they went ahead and it turned into, I guess, a success, they went ahead. The police was all over this for quite a while, taking notes and taking pictures of certain individuals that were going ahead and leading this. And they went ahead and they arrested Sal Castro is one of them. They also arrested a few students that were organizing this stuff, the males pretty much. And they became what came to be known the East LA 13, because it was 13 guys that they went ahead and they arrested, one of them being Sal Castro. Robert, do you know anything about the LA 13?
The East Side 13, yeah, they were all secretly indicted.
Okay.
Right, so they were just which is illegal, right? You can't secretly indict somebody, right? So they were falsely arrested, they were being held in jail, and they were facing severe prison time. Yeah. But the I don't want to say the good thing about it, but let's say the fortunate thing about it is that the community rallied. Right, the community rallied and they got behind. That wasn't going to happen. And it wasn't going to happen without a major protest, right? And when push came to shove, you can't secretly indict somebody, right? They were let go, right? Does that make it a wash? Of course not, right? It doesn't make it a wash, right? But it's people could probably still get secretly indicted today. The government's a strong force when they want to move, right? And they were trying to nip this in the bud. Right? Again, different time period, 1968, 1969, 1970-ish, right? Different time period. We could have seen those police officers beating students at that time make the news. Those cops weren't going to lose their job. It's a different time. Right. Let's be realistic about it. A lot of people, when it comes to the Chicano moratorium that turned violent, when it comes to these student protests that turned violent, when it comes to the Zoot Suit riots that were violent, a lot of times, a lot of people are with the notion that it's their fault. They're asking for it, right? Why were they protesting? Why were they walking out of school? Why were they doing this? Why were they doing that? Right? Why would they be disrespectful of the cause? Blah, blah, blah. There's a piece of people who would believe that, that's their fault, right? Just like some people blame the Zoot Suit riots, the Zoot Suiters for getting jumped and beat down. And, there's always going to be a portion of people like that. Right, so nothing would have happened to the cops if it was televised or not. Right, they were beating up on some kids, some disgruntled kids who have this notion of trying to change the school system. Blah 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 blah. That's all that would have the news been. Right?
Yeah. I agree. Even if they televised it, doesn't mean that heads would have been ringing. It probably wouldn't have changed too much. But Rudy, did you hear about the East LA 13, the ones that got the 13 guys that were illegally incarcerated, facing like 60
15 counts. 15 count conspiracy. I already had my notes down from the last video I did. It's 15 counts of conspiracy to disturbing public schools and 15 counts of conspiracy of disturbing the peace.
Wow. And from what I understand, they're facing about like 60 years each.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's basically a life sentence, man, for organizing this. Not only that, but also they had people infiltrate them. I don't know how big people, if people can grasp how big this is, that the government actually had someone infiltrate what was going on with the protests and everything like that. That's why it's kind of mind blowing to me. Like, how come this just, like, I don't know. I never hear about it, man. But the government actually had somebody infiltrate them to see what's going on. And that is how they got these names, the names of these leaders that were behind all this, because of the person that they had go in there and infiltrate them. and say like, okay, let me go ahead and lay out the blueprint. This is what they got going on. And these are the top names that are putting all this together. So once these protests were done, where not only that the police officers did beat the high school students, they went ahead and they rallied these leaders and they locked them up. And not only that, man, it was cool to see that it's like, hey, you know what? We're going to continue. And when Sal Castro was like, man, they didn't show any of the footage of the police officers beating the students. Like, what do we do now? Like, what's the next step? You know, do we give up? Do we keep going? Everybody came up with the idea, or somebody came up with the idea of, let's have everybody get involved, not just high school students. Invite your parents, your nieces, your nephews, everybody and anybody from the neighborhood, abuelitas, abuelitos, little kids, everybody. What are they going to do? They're going to beat everybody? Like, let's not just be a bunch of, 15 to 18-year-old, looking like delinquents out there, that they're going to put that footage out there. And let's have elders and little kids all the way, the entire neighborhoods. Man, and that's what they did, Robert. I mean, how powerful is that, man?
It's amazing, right? It's amazing because, I hate to use my Warriors cliche, man, but there's strength in numbers, man. There really is. You got your community out there, and again, when you're inviting these older people have seen a thing or two, right?
Right.
It's especially living in LA. LA, although it's and you correct me if I'm wrong, although it's always been a epicenter of Chicanoism and Mexican American culture, there's a lot of racism throughout LA's history, where like it really surprises me sometimes, right? Just because I always think to myself, like, there's a lot of Chicanos there. How could it have been like that? You know what I mean? But there was a time where a lot of Mexican Americans and a lot of Mexican people would come over, and they didn't want to make any waves, right? We'll get ahead, we'll put our head down, and we'll work hard, right? And we'll take care of our own, and that's how the communities grew, right? But they didn't want any trouble with the police. They didn't want to stick out, right? So these people had seen a lot, man. So I'm pretty sure there was a lot of the older generation who saw what these young people were going through and were like, I wish I would have done something when I was younger. Mm-hmm. Let me support this, right? Because it's not getting better, right? And, your community, people on the outside can see whatever they see. Your community knows what's going on, right? They really know what's going on. They have a finger on the pulse, right? They know that there's, sometimes, like if back in the day, if there was a teacher who said, oh, I hit your student for speaking Spanish, blah, blah, blah. There's people who probably wouldn't even believe that. You know what I mean? Somebody from another city or, come on, no, that would never happen or this or that. But somebody who's went through it would be like, oh, yeah, I know teachers who are like that. Or I know teachers who are racist. Or I know teachers who didn't help me primarily because I was Mexican American. There's people who think to themselves and be like, oh, no teacher would ever do that. But there was, because racism doesn't hide itself, right? It doesn't hide itself, right? Either you're helpful or you're not, right? So I'm pretty sure there's a lot of elderly people in the community who were just like, you know what? Yeah, let's go out there. It's time. And I believe that was the awakening and the almost like this is it, man. And I believe that's when Chicano culture and Chicano protesting, that and the Chicano moratorium was at its highest. You know what I mean? Where people could take a look and be like, that's what we're trying to do. Right? I know the Chicano moratorium turned out a little bit different, right? Because of all the violence. But still, people got together, people stood up, people stood their ground, and they stood with their message. With their message in hand. And if you take a look at the students' demands, what they were asking for, well, they were asking for some wild. Today, some of that stuff that they're asking for would be like, wow, and be asking for it in 1968. They wanted teachers to, wow, man, I think I sent it to you. If you could ever take a look, show some of that. But there's a lot of things that they were asking for that the school board actually said, we'll give you. The
Right.
students actually agreed to almost everything that they asked for.
Mhm.
They didn't give them any of it, by the way, but they agreed to all of it. If that makes any sense, they agreed to all of their demands, but they didn't get any of them.
So they were heard, but they didn't receive anything.
Yeah, and they said the students, once they went to the board and everything, the board of education said, we'll give into your demands. But when push came to shove, we don't have money, we don't have this, we don't have that. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's just different, man. You
Let
know,
me
it's just different.
see. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, if you could take a look, it's just some of the demands that they were asking for.
Let me see. I think I got them right here. I don't know where Rudy went, but if I could bring it up here, I was trying to bring it up right here on my laptop, but for one reason or another, I was only able to bring up one thing at a time. Let me see. Uh, all right, so I can go over a few of them here. Let me let's see.
I even think they were asking for lunches to be catered to them. You know what I mean? Have Mexican American have like
Right,
Mexican lunches.
right. Well, one of the things that they were asking for, administrators and teachers who show any form of prejudice towards Mexican or Mexican American students, including failure to recognize, understanding, and appreciate Mexican culture and heritage, will be removed from East Los Angeles schools. So that's definitely one thing that they were asking for.
Right.
Another one is textbook and curriculum will be developed to show Mexican and Mexican Americans contributions to the U.S. society and to show the injustice that Mexicans have suffered as a culture of that society. Textbooks should concentrate on Mexican folklore rather than English folklore. Um,
That was studies right there, right?
yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean,
Right.
we've been saying it here for a while. It's part of American history. You got to throw some of that stuff in there, man. Hey, Rudy, what is your thoughts, man, with the students going ahead and saying like, you know what, let's involve our families. Let's get our little brothers, little nephews, little nieces, abuelitos, abuelitas, parents involved. And that's what they did. That's what they actually ended up doing, man. And it became more than just the high schools. It was something different, man. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, one, I could say that my grandpa and my grandmother in San Jose, they walked out in the 8th grade. They always told me that. So they were a part of the walkout in San Jose in '69. They were both in the 8th grade. So they were, even people from up north were inspired by, the LA walkouts and the nationwide walkouts. But that's what I guess you needed something like I think from remembering in the movie, there was a part where they were asking some kid was asking the parents to walk, and I think a part of it was because they're so-called illegal. On
Mm,
one of the reasons why some of the grandparents or parents didn't want to walk out there. But you needed you know the system to know that the parents were gonna back up their kids. Because I can't think about it like my knowing that my kid's on a protest right now and I'm not out there. Like I couldn't even, I can't relate because I'm gonna be out there for
mm,
one. But and especially when you think about what that time was, the '69, white authority was on an all-time high here in the United States. So they were easily being able to push these kids around and these college kids. So once you get the whole neighborhood involved, what can the system of the United States really, or LA County, let's just say, the sheriffs and the police, now what can they do when you got like strength in numbers? You got the community that you're gonna have to deal with now. And so, that's what's needed. You need these kids started it, college kids, teenagers, late 20s, because I think Sal Castro was like 26 in his late 20s at the time. I think maybe
mm.
even when he started getting older, but I think his wife was a person that was always beside him that helped him. But uh I'm probably wrong on his age, but man, there's this guy that he had he had a right hand man, and he was also a guy that I should have his name, who should also be, though, what I want to add right next to Sal Castro when it comes to this LA County walk. He had his wife also by him, to let people know his wife was one who was also behind his back.
Okay. Okay. What I do want to throw out there is, so the East LA 13, they were incarcerated, and while they were facing like 60 years or something like that, it didn't stick. But from what I understand, they still did 2 years. Robert, they were still locked up for about 2 years, man. Just delay until all that was dropped. But they still did 2 years, man, behind the walls. Just really, I don't really even really know for what, man, but they were still incarcerated for 2 years. So Sal Castro did 2 years, man, for this movement, for this walkout, man. What's your thoughts on that?
Are you positive that he did 2 years?
He did.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
2 years. And I'm not trying to be argumentative. I'm just, just if anybody could, and if he did, yeah, like I said, man, it's
Let me see if I can pull that article up. Go for it. I'm
It's just a shame, man. It just, but it's always, that could happen today, right? I'm not saying that that's a good excuse, but yeah, I could see that happening because, like I said, it's a group that has been used to having things like that happen to them. So I could see that happening 68, 78, 88. I could see it happening to somebody in a year. People are falsely imprisoned. And I believe if he did his time, no matter how he did it, it was falsely imprisoned. That's unjust. And again, if that's another thing that happened to him, which I'm unaware of, so thanks for bringing that to my attention. He's another guy who didn't use that as a crutch. He kept on being a motivator. He kept on going to schools and trying to inspire through education. Like he never used that as a crutch, which is a big deal, right? Because education is the key to the future, in my opinion. Right? So
yeah,
good for him.
Yeah, definitely. Let me see. I'm trying to pull up that.
I thought they dropped it, and so he didn't go to jail.
Yeah, because I know he got his job back pretty fast.
Yeah, he did. He did get his job back. Let me see. On the school that he sat and came to be seen as a milestone. Okay, maybe this is not where I saw that. Shoot. All right, I'll try to pull up another one. Thought I saw that maybe it was some of the other guys that did 2 years.
I know.
But well, nonetheless, I'll try to bring it up right now.
I know some of the other leaders did a couple years.
Okay, it might have been them. It might have been them then. Let me see. The East Side, the East LA 13. Okay, I don't see Sal Castro's name. Okay, it might have been them. It might have been the other leaders that went ahead and spent 2 years.
And the only reason
they're still facing the same charges, like 60 years or so.
And the only reason I think that it wouldn't have been him is because he was almost the face of this.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I said, it wasn't Sal Castro on the walkouts. It wasn't like the walkouts were his backup band. They were both equal, but he became kind of like the face of it. So when they started, I believe even at the end of the movie, and I hate using the movie as my point of reference for something historical, but I can remember at the end of the movie, there were everybody, free Sal, the chants were free Sal needs to be free. And I think that resonated, that took on a life of its own. So I could see out of all of the 13, him being the one that they said, okay, let's let this dude go first. Maybe we go all these other guys, but this dude, Sal Castro, he's got too much of the community behind him.
Have any of you watched the Walkout documentary? it came out in 2003. Like it's still on YouTube. There's the one about the farmers, the one about the walkouts, and the one about taking back your homeland of Reyes Tahina. And like you could watch the actual footage on the walkouts and they're protesting in East LA. And that dog, I seen it when I was 13 years old when it came out on PBS in 2003. But I always watch it yearly. I watch it like twice a year. And Sal Castro speaking, Corky Gonzalez, he's talking on these documentaries, and they're showing the footage while they're talking.
No, but now I am gonna watch that documentary. And you know what's crazy is that Sal Castro would teach the students, or would recite the Yo Soy Joaquin by
Right.
Coqui Gonzalez to
Yeah.
his students, man, which is a powerful poem, man. It really is. I love it, man. But
There used to be a guy from San Jose. He's actually was from the LA. He was part of this walkout. He was a big time writer for the San Jose Mercury News. So every once in a while, back in the day when newspapers were still viable, when people would get newspapers, every once in a while he would write an article. His name was, I believe, Jose Martinez. And every once in a while he would write an article about his experience, hey, I was there kind of scenario. I've always thought that was cool. So I kind of feel that was his way of keeping that going.
yeah,
Which is a big deal, right? Because if you don't have the written history, it's got to be through oral history, right?
yeah. I mean, word of mouth, man. Just go ahead and put it out there. One thing that I was checking on was after those walkouts, it inspired not just California, but the nation as well. And I think the college graduation went from 2% to 25% after the walkouts. And a lot of those students, one of the biggest thing was for them to go to college so they can be put in positions where they can actually make some differences. So that was really cool to see, man. But no, man, good stuff, man. I'm really having a good time just learning about all this, man. Like I said, I'm kind of embarrassed, man, because I'm from the area and if you told me the name Sal Castro, I would have been like, I don't know who that is. But
you don't look at it as being embarrassed, because it's just how, if you're not learned, if you're not taught it, like we were saying, how can you do better if you don't know better? If nobody's teaching you this, if nobody's talking to you about this, right? We were talking about ideas and people spreading the wrong ideas. We picked that up real fast, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're not talking, we should, things like this. That's why this platform, I'm grateful for, because more people get to hear about this. You know what I mean? And it's nothing to be embarrassed at all, man. There's, believe me, a lot of people who haven't heard of Sal Castro or his contributions from LA, from San Jose, from wherever, right? If you're not being taught it, man, you can't, if it's being suppressed, it's being suppressed. I don't know if it's being suppressed because we're hearing about it now, right? But it's just not knowing is no excuse for not wanting, right? So out there in YouTube land, man, if there's somebody that you want to hear about, that you want to learn about it, man, pick up. You got Google now. Say somebody's name, man. They'll give you all kinds of information about somebody, right?
Right.
The days of not learning about somebody or not learning about, pretty soon they're going to be at an end, right? If you want to learn about it, let's go learn about it. That's why this platform is great, man. You give everybody the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Sal Castro, as you did last time with who do we speak about with Corky?
Corky.
Right.
And we'll talk a little bit more about Corky on another one. I know my boy Root Beer, man. He really wants to talk about Corky. Hey, Vic, I agree with you today, but back then, thing was a different time. But I agree with you about that today, man.
Right.
College, yeah, you don't really need college depending on what it is that you want to do, but learning how to build credit and business and things like that's going to go a long way. Absolutely.
And I agree, man. And, and I honestly believe this. I've said this before, man, is that I don't think college is for everybody. right? I don't, but I do think if you have an opportunity to go to college, go, because it gives you different choices, different avenues, right? A lot of people go to college, man. Like Vic was saying, is it necessary? Most people go to college, they get a degree they never use, right?
Yeah, yeah,
But but what I'm saying is that if you get an opportunity, it's gonna open doors for you.
right,
It's just gonna give you different choices. You have choices. You get that college degree, you get that, you get that piece of paper that your work wants you to get, right?
right, right,
So yeah, is it for everybody? I don't know. Is it a good thing to have in your back pocket? Yeah, it is. It
yeah,
is.
yeah. Root beer. Any last thoughts, man, on Sal
Yeah,
Castro
I
before we
wanted
wrap
to
it up?
say just how I wanted to say how about you got infiltrators,
Mhm.
and it's just interesting. It's not surprising. No one should be. In one way, I could say like no one should be surprised about the history of how people were treated. And my assumption, because we know about like how the United States system was built off another person authority gaining control over another culture. Like to me, so it's like as a kid, like I used to watch movies and see how people were treated, and and they show you in movies, so it's like it was like no surprise, like it should be no surprise some of this history on how kids were beat and kids getting paddled. And my assumption, because that's what look at the history, you could watch movies growing up, and also the one of the things is that Chicano, it's only in college, and not a lot of Chicanos still go to college. Chicano history is only, it's not within the high schools, it's only one subject, and you're lucky if it's at your college to be able to learn it. So that's
Mhm.
another, because like in the 80s, because I always wondered like what happened to our leaders? Like, why did they all disappear after the 80s? Like, where did all these guys, where did Sal Castro go? Corky, like they were all alive still. Like they all passed away in the 2000s. Like they made that 2003 documentary. It's like,
Mhm.
why did they stop? One assumption was because while they got what they wanted, like they started bringing Mexican teachers, Chicano teachers into high schools, into the colleges, and we got Chicano studies in college. So that was it, and it was like it's like I guess if that's all we wanted, because that's if we even though that's what they got, it didn't carry on. Look, because people still don't know about it.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
No. Right. Right. Right on. That's exactly that. That's what I think. It's like, yeah, I don't. I don't hear about this stuff. I don't learn. I've never heard of learn about this stuff unless you actually take a specific class.
Well,
That,
the good thing about that is that I've said this before, is that in the state of California, Chicano studies or ethnic studies is going to be something that's mandated. It's no longer going to be an elective.
mm,
So all high schools are going to start teaching it. So all high schools are going to have to start preparing a curriculum for it, as well as college. Before it was an elective, it was something that you took it as an elective requirement.
right.
Pretty soon it's going to be a requirement. So that's a
Right.
step in the right direction.
hey, hey, Robert, as a teacher, can an Asian man teach Chicano studies and understand teaching Chicano what Chicano studies is? Like someone of another ethnicity understand Chicano studies to be like I wouldn't think who am I to teach somebody else's
I,
culture
I
to
think
them?
I think somebody could teach anything, but I think there's going to be something that's called cultural a cultural aspect to it. And I'll give you an example. And I think he said it the best, because I've been asked that question before. We all know who
Yeah.
Denzel Washington is,
Right, right, right.
right? And he was talking about a movie. Has anybody ever seen the movie Fences?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
Yeah.
he was talking about the movie Fences, and he was talking about the importance of it being from a black director, right? And he said, you know what? He's all he said Martin Scorsese, the great director, he could have directed Schindler's List, and it probably would have been a pretty good movie, even though he's not Jewish. A Jewish guy like Steven Spielberg could probably have done a movie like The Goodfellas, and it probably would be a good movie. But he wouldn't understand the cultural the cultural things that go in to the movie.
The relations.
Right. Like, for example, his example was, with Denzel Washington used an example with
The hot iron.
the hot iron on
Yeah.
a young lady's. We all know how that smells
Yeah.
because that's part of our culture. That's how we grow up. Steven Spielberg wouldn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
So he might omit things, right? I think a good teacher could teach anything to anybody. But as far as a cultural connection where there's just an understanding, and I think that I think that Asian teacher could teach something, but I think he would also learn because there's just going to be things he's unaware of, right? Because, like I said, there's cultural differences, right? A good teacher is going to be able, okay, yeah, I can teach this, okay, right? I can give you the knowledge, right? But as far as connecting it and interweaving it and maybe making that connection, I think that's where the difficulty would lie, right? I think that's where the difficulty would lie, right? Because it's much more than just, to me, Chicano culture is much more than dates or much more than knowing, oh yeah, that was 1968. Do you understand why it was happening? Right? Do you understand the significance of the Zoot Suit riot? Yeah, it was terrible. Why was it terrible? Why did it happen? Why were there so many Mexicans here to begin with? Why did the Navy go against them? All of this stuff, right? Where somebody else might teach it, be like, yeah, these two sides fought, and that's all true. He could teach that, but can he get into the cusp of everything? And this is why, and this is just different things that you can touch on. That I don't think the connection. I think the connection would be different, right? I really do, right? So I think he could teach it, just like, but I think it would be like how you learn math. It'd be really structured, right? It'd be really formula. Math is a formula, right? Be very structured. There's only one right answer. When you have a subject like Chicano studies, there should be multiple answers. There should be guys thinking out of the box. There should be 10 papers and at least 4 different opinions on it. Because you're trying to inspire thinking out the box, critical thinking. It's more than just dates. Explain. That's what I think, man. If that answered your question,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Magoo, I agree. I completely agree, man. There should be a lot of teachings of that too, man. Learning how to build your credit, and there should be a lot of that teaching as well, man.
Yep.
I completely agree.
Taxes.
But with that, gentlemen, we are up against the clock. Hey, Rudy, just any last words, brother, before we wrap it up real quick?
Yeah, blood is loyalty. But nah, I'm just but nah, other than that, I always enjoy talking to you guys. I look forward to these. These excite me. Like, ooh, I get to hear some talk about history with people, because there's not people that I like that just want to talk about history, and so I enjoy this. And other than that, culture is power, history is knowledge.
Yeah, Robert, any last words, brother, before call it?
Yeah, man, I'm gonna take a page from my man, and I'm just Rudy over here. Just say, keep it between the lines. No, I'm just joking. Just joking, man. No, man, just thank you again for the format, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate both of you, man. It's great to have. It's cool because you could have, especially with Rudy, somebody from the a little younger generation, get him to put his input on it as well. You know what I mean? So I'm appreciative of that. And again, man, I say this every time I come on here. Shout out to Ed, man. He's doing big things. You know what I mean? Top shelf. And I appreciate you allowing me to come here and speak with you, man, and speak with Rudy as well. So, right on.
All right. And that will do it for this one, familia. Again, we're going to try to do these about once or twice a month, just a little bit touching a little bit on Chicano history, man. But with that, that is my man Rudy from Chicano Studies. Go check him out on Chicano Ideas. My man Robert Anthony, high school Chicano Studies teacher. As always, live your life like you're on the road. Be aware of your surroundings and always keep a safe distance. Blood makes you related, but loyalty makes you family. Till next time, this is Ed Thecholotrucker for Robert Anthony and Rudy from Chicano Ideas. Over and out. R.I.P. Sal Castro.
What the walkouts did, it focused the attention now on the Chicanos in the city, because these kids were serious.
A lot of us had the same sort of complaints about what was happening in our lives as far as our education. So we decided to take a survey.
And that's when we start to gather that information and start interacting with the school district saying, you're not meeting our needs, and look at, we want to go to college.
It was the political evolution of a group of young Chicanos in East LA and asserting their real identity, and then getting involved and realizing that the system wouldn't change unless you became more direct action.
My decision to walk out was probably the lightest decision in terms of what I would have liked to have done at that point, with that kind of youth and energy and anger.
To see outright hostility, brutality, it didn't match the thing that we were doing. We didn't commit a crime. We were protesting.
The blowouts made us all realize that, wow, collectively we had a strong voice, and it gave us a power that we didn't realize that we had before it.
This was a time in which enough Chicano students had gained mastery of the tools that were necessary to shake up the system and had taken the ideals of the country to heart. And so we protested for our rights.
As the bell rang for the kids to go to school, into the classroom, out they went, with their heads held high, with dignity. It was beautiful to be a Chicano that day.